We're going to paint this little vampire guy. To prepare, we're coating with a base of coppery brown, then a light glazing or airbrushing of red from overhead, and finally a quick wash of earthshade. If you don't have a tiny little guy or short man of your own to paint, just go to a place where they congregate, like a Good Life Fitness, Ford F-150 accredited dealership, or police academy. Find a little man there and you can just pick him up. He'll squeal and say, "No, let me down," and kick his dainty little feet. But you can put him down on the ground and say, "Listen, if you honestly don't deserve to be treated like this, look me in the eyes and say so, and I'll let you go." But he won't. He knows why. And you can pick him up again, fully pacified. I should mention, starting with an off black brown, then brushing copper midtones manually would have looked nicer for competition. But I was incredibly ill the entire time I painted this, and I was looking for any off-ramp into simplicity. Like literally blood coming out of my ears kind of thing. Anyway, I take whatever red I had on hand and mix it with a third of the copper brown before establishing my highlights. Once those are in place, then use pure red. Painting red is a common oopsie doodle for people, because when you add white to red, you get pink. The things we paint ultimately look like whatever color is just shy of our highest highlight. So that little bit of pink just makes the thing you painted look pink. So we need to be a bit more strategic. With something like the cape, it can be fairly uniform given its lack of reflection, but we want the armor to gleam. Any white you add is going to take you on the road to Pink Town, but there is a trick. We make that uber bright pink and just dry brush it. Like, overdo it. Anywhere a highlight is going beyond what we've already established needs to be as rosy as the cheeks of a short man being picked up and placed into a wicker bin by the concierge who, as part of his duties, patrols the grounds for wee men and disposes of them humanely, before they injure someone who may trip over them as they scamper about underfoot. You can even paint highlights and scratches at this point. Once all the white is in place, we can grab the pure red and glaze, preferably with glazing medium. It'll only take a couple passes, but ideally you'll cover about 70% of the white on one pass, and then like 90% more on the second. You might get a teeny hint of pink here and there, but there's something about the red being layered over a white base. We can do this with all of our red. It'll look great. But I was feeling too ill to concentrate with the smaller brushes, so I switched things up for a bit. "I will return to this little man," said no woman ever. I need something I can grip like a toddler with his first crayon that I can focus on through my dull, dead eyes bursting with sinus pressure. Airbrushing and dollar store brushes will be mostly fine for the dragon, so I'll move on to that. I don't think you can see any of this purple by the end of all of this. It really just helped to establish where shadows are going to go with an ink, so there's minimal buildup. The idea for this model is I want the sun setting on one side of it, like it's the golden hour, and a supernatural blue moon rising on the other side of it. I use Abyss Blue for the darkest shadows as a starting point and choose a midtone for the pestilent green of the lit areas of the dragon. If I was going ham, I'd use a darker green everywhere and highlight everything up. But the antibiotics are not working and I feel like death, so I'm going to start with my midtone and just use a wash for everything. It's fine. Look at all that texture. Baby boy was made for a bath. I do throw some forest green from below though, which isn't perfect, but it's better than perfect. It's perfect enough. I should also explain something odd I did. I ran out of blue to airbrush and use as a wash for the shadowed areas and had nothing appropriate to use, but I did have a bottle of normally opaque-ish contrast paint called Ultramarine that had been sitting and settling for ages, so I just used that without shaking the bottle so the settled white paint got left behind, and that was fine. Look at me hammering out the bone base colors with a watercolor brush. I barely have to reload it, and I didn't even add much water to the paint. There is nothing better than a big moist dragon, is there? It reminds me of a puppet in an 80s horror movie. For the bones, I chose to use this Army Painter wash that I had, and I normally don't really love that wash. I know a lot of people do, but it has a bit of a greenness to it, and I usually prefer something like Agrax Earthshade or Seraphim Sepia from Citadel. In this case, though, it's a perfect match for our decaying color theme. There's a purpose for everything. As long as it's at least 5'10" minimum. This is where the actual painting starts, with a bright green, starting with a bit of the base color blended into it. I used a lot of scale 75 because they're just so forgiving to blend and glaze with, especially if you mix them with flow aid. But if you notice, these brushes I'm using are mostly old dollar store brushes. I think a lot of people look at huge models and get intimidated because they think they should paint them the same way they paint smaller models, which I think is crazy. If you're going for a golden demon or whatever, then sure, paint every last millimeter like it's going to be scrutinized. But what makes more sense to me is if I start with the biggest brushes that I can possibly use, and then I don't let go of them until I absolutely have to. And maybe then I don't jump right to the size 0 nightmare brushes. If anything, it's going to give me more time to hold the model at arm's length, make decisions about what works or not, and frankly, have fun with the model. I know you. I've been in your home. And if there's one thing I know about you is that you don't finish projects or do your best work if you're miserable. Painting in a way that is fun is as important as accuracy, color theory, or being unambiguously tall enough to get on a roller coaster. This is also where I really start to think about where light is going to bounce off of on leathery wings and wet flesh. I know you've highlighted up a model before to find that it was all too uniform and didn't really seem to pop, despite there being so much white. You don't highlight up everything on a big model. Rub olive oil all over your feet and stand under the bright lights of your kitchen. Look at how certain parts of it leap through the reflection to your eye and how much of it doesn't. Shiny things don't reflect everywhere. If you don't believe me, get your roommates or loved ones and do the same to them. And you'll see that no matter the feet, it's the same thing. But you gotta make sure it's feet though. It has to be feet. For the bricks, I just used various contrast paints, but mea culpa. I drowned it all in 2 thick coats of Acrax, but it was too much, and I tried to fix it, and there was a clog in my airbrush that I normally show my failures, so I think I was feeling like a little bit ashamed. I didn't have it in me. So you'll notice at the end, that brick column looks a little different. Whatever. You can paint brick however you want. That Night Shift guy on YouTube here also does amazing brick. He's like the god king of depressing European masonry crumble, and if you haven't watched his stuff, you're missing out. For the blue, I didn't do much different than the green, except I made more of the blend a darker tone compared to the green. Despite the reflective nature of the blue, I ultimately didn't want it to initially draw the eye away from the green. Also, this one bright blue from Scale 75 was terrible in a way I've never experienced before, and it didn't behave like Scale 75 normally does. I know this is an odd thing to say, and I'm a brush licker, I'm sorry, but it tasted weird even. Like, can paint rot? Does paint go off? I always thought it was like honey. It just kind of lasts until, I don't know. For the basing, I had this dragon skeleton that was pretty cool, but it was slightly smaller than the standard dragon, so it seemed appropriate to break it apart and use it as basing material since it would never reach its full potential. Listen, I'm not tall. I know, I'm just kidding. This is me lashing out, you know, hurt people hurt people. I mean, I'm not a short king or anything, but that's less because, I mean, I'm like 5'9". It's more that I don't recognize royal hierarchies, and the idea of a short king disgusts me. I think it was Diderot that said, "We will never be free until the last teeny tiny itty bitty king is hung with the entrails of the last itsy bitsy itty whittle priest," or something like that. Oh, and man, the acrylic modeling paste they sell to add to thicken acrylic paint for canvas is an awesome basing material and way cheaper than the specialty hobby materials that I'm used to buying to set up like earth basing. Try that stuff. I painted the base pretty much the same way to keep the palette similar, but made sure to spray the blues from very low angles. But there's not much difference than what I did with the dragon. Once everything was finally glued in place, I was feeling a lot better, so I busted out the brushes and really started to dial in the highlights so they pop. This is my favorite time of painting any model because the way I paint, everything usually is ugly until it isn't, and it's ugly for a long time. Finally, having things come together with this late stage highlighting sparks a lot of joy. I got a rush of energy and decided to paint some of the metals in this kind of Demon Forge painting scheme. I used a copper recipe which goes from brown to orange to olive, but blended a bit of blue into the base brown and used it to glaze the absolute lowest tones together. I then added some red and used that to glaze the higher tones and midtones together. The end result is it kind of looks like a superheated metal that's cursed. I had no idea how this would turn out. I was just trying stuff, but I'm really happy with the end result, and I think I'm going to use it again. There's other stuff I'm painting here, but I'm not going over it too much because the vampire covered up a lot of it, like when you actually assemble this all together. It's cool that they modeled all that detail, but god damn it. I was trying to rush this out the door to be a door prize for a GT. So I kind of spent a lot of time painting stuff I didn't need to. Anyway, congrats to the winner of the 2025 Battered Bison, by the way. Go Bisons. The face was also pretty easy to paint because when you want to paint a face to look foreboding and evil, most of it is in shadow, which means you're really just highlighting up the highest points. You'll see I used some purple for around the eyes and cheeks, but most of the paint on the head is his ears and the top of his bald head. He kind of looks like, it's probably a deep cut, but like Northern Lion in those memes where people put like a goth e-girl filter on him. And I like that. At this point I felt the model was pretty mostly done, but I had some time left, so I made a number of passes. Just pushing up those highlights more and more, going all the way up to 11 white. I wish I showed it more in the video, but I spent a lot of time picking up the model, holding it at arm's length, and looking at it like I'm someone seeing it for the first time. I also took it to my wife and was like, rip it apart, fuck me up. And she did. She does, she's ruthless. You need someone like that in your life. I also used a pre-mixed yellow glaze to highlight between those highlights and upper mid-tones. I know it's tempting to think that more white will read to our eyes as being more in direct sunlight, but our stupid brains are smarter than that. Adding some yellow to select areas of anything, but in this case I did the dragon and the vampire armor, even the lance a little bit. It really helps to sell the effect. And I'm just realizing now I didn't do it to the shield. That was probably the most important place to do it, but I didn't do it to the shield. It's already been given away as a prize. Sorry, dude. But that's okay. Later, Gators.